Welcome to part 2 of our Capstone series. If you haven't seen part 1, you need to go back and watch that first. Now in this lesson, we're going to continue with where we ended and finish this project. So let's get into it. Welcome back to part 2 of our Capstone project. Hopefully you guys enjoyed part 1 and were able to follow through with all those concepts. Now where we left off is we had some interference between a couple components that we need to address, as well as add all of the holes for our hardware to come into the place to hold it all together, as well as we have our drawer here that we need to design so it gets inserted into there. All right, with that being said, let's jump straight into CAD now and get going with this. Now, the first thing I want to address is I want to add the clearance for these two flanges that are coming into this shelf that's inside of our pen and marker holder area. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go solid, create that sketch, and select that particular surface. With that being said, I can come in here and I can just project this flange area directly down. So we're going to go to project. And we're going to do it as a construction line. We're going to project each side here. Once we have those projected on, we're going to go to our offset. And we're going to offset, but we're going to turn off that construction feature. So we want this area to be essentially the spot that we're going to be extruding through to cut that out. So we're going to extrude each one of these. I'm going to do 20 thousandths of an inch. Seems like a lot, but there's no reason for us to be making contact in this area, and it'll allow us to have a little bit of leeway with these bends. Remember that we talked about tolerance stack up, and so that tolerance stack up can be added up with these radiuses that are in this corner here, as along with all the cutting that we're doing. So we're going to do 20 thousandths on each one of these. So let's go ahead and put that 20 thousandths in. We have to do it in 4 places here. Come down. And we got one more to go. Oh, last one. Now that we have all of these, what I'm going to do is we're going to finish this sketch for a second, and we're going to do a feature what I do a lot of times, and I'm going to isolate that component that we're wanting to cut. So we have that sketch kind of showing where the flanges are, so we don't need to see those flanges anymore. So I'm going to come here. This is the last component that we did. I'm going to right click on it, come all the way down and isolate this. Now this is something we didn't really talk about in the first 5 chapters. This is a little quick way to do it. What it does is hides that sketch as well. So I'm going to go back into my sketch. I'm going to drop down to my most recent one and re-show that sketch. So now you can see that I have the 4 rectangles that I need to cut out along with the component that I'm wanting to cut. The last thing I want to do is just I'm going to draw a line straight across this part. Oh, we need to go back in and edit that sketch. Now that we're in here, I'm going to draw a line straight across and another line straight across. And the reason is that we have the corners over here that are not necessarily being cut. We need to address as well. So with that, we're going to add that these need to be horizontal. And we're going to make it so that the point on this rectangle is in touching that line, so we're cutting all the way across. Now that we're done there, we're going to come into sheet metal, we're going to click extrude, and I'm going to select those 2 profiles that I want to remove. And once we have all of those selected, we're going to roll this up. We can either pull this down, we can select the distance, or what we could do is make it so it cuts all the way through that part where we select all. The all is a great feature because if we change the thickness of this part, it's going to adjust with it. Now that we have that, we're going to click OK, and we have that clearance built into our parts. To get all of our parts back, we're going to go back to our original component. We're going to right click, we're going to come down and click unisolate, and everything's going to pop back up. Now in these corners here, we should be having clearance, but I'm going to go ahead and add a little radius in that corner as well, just to play it safe. So we're going to come in here, we're going to select each of our 4 corners. We have 2 more to go here. And once we have these 4, I'm just going to roll it a little bit just to have that extra clearance. Now a lot of this stuff is just because of the tolerancing. We're going to just actually do an 1/8 inch. We have plenty of space here. We're not putting anything hard on top of this. It's not locating anything. Now we have a lot of space built into our part that we don't need to worry about everything not being able to get put together. So now that we have that shelf and our interference addressed, we can go ahead and hide that sketch now to clean up our area. Let's go ahead and add all of the through holes that are going to mount our 2 L brackets together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide those 2 inner shelf components in here. Oh, we actually messed up and we didn't actually create a component in the last one. So this body is essentially part of our master component, which is still okay. It's just we're not going to be able to easily change the thickness of it without affecting other things within that component. So we shouldn't have any issues with that. With that being said, now we have this hollowed out area. So we have that L built into our parts. Let's go ahead and add the through holes. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to sketch on the outside of this side wall here. And once I have that done, I'm going to hide each one of those sidewalls, and I'm going to project those flanges that we are trying to tie into on the inside onto that surface. So we're going to go to project. Here, we're going to come over, click our construction line, and we're going to grab each one of those flanges and click OK. So really cool setup here is that now I can re-show, and I have an outline, even though they're kind of hard to see here. We have an outline of each one of those. We can now come in here and draw a center line with our lines from each individual midpoint. And what that does is it creates a hole. We're going to have a point that we can create a hole that's directly in the center of each one of our flanges. And if we change our flange lengths, they're projected. So we're going to also change our center line, and our screws will move automatically with those. Now we're going to grab this one here. We have one last one up here. A quick way to make it so that these are all equally spaced from the edges is we're going to click the equal constraint, and we're going to double kind of click on each line to make them all the same length to each other. Then we'll set a dimension that will lock them all into place. Now that we have them all set to be equal, we're going to hit D for dimension. We're going to click on one of them, and I'm going to set this at 0.5 of an inch, so 1/2 inch in. I have that. I'm going to finish my sketch now, and I have each one of these individual points that I can go to solid, I can come to hole, and I can select each individual spot that I'm wanting. We don't have to tie in every single spot. We're just kind of wanting to grab each kind of corner in the center of our part. And you can see here now that I'm cutting through. If I cut all the way through, now I'm going to create holes that are essentially the same on both sides of the part. I'm going all the way passing through. We're going to change these to be a little bit smaller. So we're going to put 0.0625. We're going to end up wanting these to be a pass-through for, actually we'll change these back up to 0.102. We want these to be pass-throughs for that 632 that we're going to be putting in later. Now that we have that selected, we're going to click OK. And we have holes all the way through that are ready. Remember that these are going to be hardware. We're going to put nuts in on these on PEM hardware on the inside, so we don't have a screw or a wrench to hold those. And we'll have our hardware coming in from the outside. With that, we have all of our holes through. We can show our other components back in. And we just need to end up putting in our tab-in slots that will lock these two into place. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and isolate this body again. So we're going to isolate this, and I'm going to draw those tabs directly onto this. A quick way to do that is we're just going to create a sketch on the side. We're going to put in a couple rectangles. And right now I'm making them all different sizes. We're going to use the equal constraint to set them to each other. Both in, I guess we'll do these two in length, but we want them all to stick through the same amount. Now that we have that, we're going to set this to 0.063, so they're essentially just flush with the outside of our part. And you got to remember all of our aluminum that we've been selecting so far is 0.063 thick, so that tab is going to just be flush on the outside. We'll set these at 1 inch as well as 0.25 from the top. Do the same thing over here since these aren't tied together. And then at the very bottom, this can be a much smaller tab. Let's just go ahead and make this be 0.25. And we want it to be centered, so we're going to come up to our midpoint constraint. We'll click on the line that is the line that's designating our rectangle tab, and then click on the overall line on the bottom. That's going to lock those two to be in the middle of each other. Once we have that, we're going to click extrude, and we're going to extrude each one of these tabs so that they are the distance through. And I do that by clicking on distance to object, and then I'm going to select the surface on the back side. And that automatically makes it so that it's going to adjust if I end up changing the thickness of my part. I want to make sure that it's on join, clicking OK. I have my tab now. The next thing we're going to do is unisolate this body. And we can see our tabs are flush with the outside, but we don't have our slot for them to indicate into. So let's go ahead and add that now. Selecting a sketch on the back side, we're going to come up, create, project, and we're going to once again turn on our construction line and project that tab coming through on the back. Once I click OK, I can turn off my construction. I'm going to do an offset on that, and this is where we've talked about in the past of what our tolerances need to be. Now, SendCutSend's tolerances are ±5. It's a very thin aluminum. We're not expecting a lot of burr, and additionally, we're not going to have any finishing on this. We're most likely okay to switch to a 10 thousandths offset. So 10 thousandths on all sides, 20 thousandths overall. Once I click on that, we can see that dimension pops in, and we are ready to go. We're going to want to hide this body, and I'll show you why. We're going to click on extrude. We're going to click on that surface here, and if I cut through, you can see that it's cutting out my mid plate that I ended up putting in there, my divider. Now I can do this a couple of different ways. I can come up here to objects to cut, and I can turn off that object, or I can hide it in my tree over here, and then it's not on my list to be cut as well. So either way is fine. There's more than one way to do it. Clicking OK, we now have our tabs here. We can re-show our part. And if we zoom in, we can see that little gap, and that middle divider should be oriented. Now it's centered. Now we still need to cut out the tabs here as well as create tabs on our bottom plate. So we're going to do those both right now. We're going to do them both at the same time. So on that, we're going to click on create a sketch. And we're going to hide these outside components really quick so we can see what we're doing in here. Let's go ahead and project that tab through that we need to have to locate our divider on the bottom. Click OK. We're sketching on the other side of that surface, but it doesn't quite matter. We're just going to extrude from a different angle. And then with that, I have that. We're going to do that offset as well. We'll do the 10 thousandths offset for our tolerancing for our slot. So we have that ready. But additionally, what we're going to do here is we're going to create the two tabs on the outside to locate it into where we want our outside shell, our outside walls to be. So let's just end up, we're still in our sketch. We're going to look at the top, and I'm going to hide our other components here on the outside. Let's just draw in our square. I'm just going to make it right off that end so it just comes straight out a little bit further. We can tie in this point here. We're going to set this at 0.063 or 625. That ends up tying it in so it's flush with the outside of our piece. And we can do the same thing over here, or we can end up doing a mirror. So we're just going to draw a line here in the middle. We're going to click mirror up in our sketch. select our components down here, select our mirror line, clicking OK. Now I have two different things I need to do now. First, I need to cut out my slot, and then I need to extrude in these tabs. We're going to do them in two separate things. First one, we're going to hide that body. Let's go ahead and cut out the slot for our tab. And we're going to do that by just selecting all. And we have to flip the direction. Now we're cutting through. And what ends up happening is our sketch disappears on us because we just used it for extrusion. So we'll just come back over here, turn it back on, and then we'll click extrude to add those tabs. Now we're almost done modifying our overall parts. We just need to add the shelf here at the end. We're going to end up doing that to object. Click on join. And now we can hide that sketch. We have those tabs. Let's re-show our outside walls. And we just need to add the slots for those. And then we're locked in together. We'll go ahead and click on the sketch on the outside. We're going to have to hide this wall so we can see what we're doing. Let's project that tab that we just created. Make sure that we do construction, clicking OK. And then we're going to offset with a non-construction line by, on this one, we're going to do that 10,000th as well. Now, on this right here, we ended up having it exactly the same. We just need to hide and re-show our components to get that slot put in place. Extrude it through. On this one, we're going to do it the opposite, right? So we're going to cut all the way through. We're not hitting this flange here. We're going to drop down this menu, and we're just going to deselect that we want that bottom flange to be cut out, which is this one right here. Now that we have that, we'll click OK. And we have all of our components are now mated and ready to go with each other. We just need to create that shelf or the drawer that's going to be going in there. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I want to have a little bit of distance. We talked about this in the Arduino lessons, that we want a little distance from this bottom just to have some space built into it. So we're going to create an offset plane off the bottom face here. And I'm just going to offset it 10,000ths of an inch, just to give ourselves some wiggle room on interference. We're going to create a sketch on that plane. And from there, we can actually hide a lot of our other components. And we're going to do a projection of our two walls. So one wall, second wall. And now if we look at this from the top view, we can also hide this part. Let's draw in a rectangle here. Now this rectangle, I don't want it to be all the way up against the outside walls. I want it to have a little bit of space, especially since there's going to be nuts in here. So we're going to end up spacing this out by 1/4 of an inch on each side. And I want this to be flush with the front face when it's actually all said and done. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line to here. And I'm going to make this line horizontal. That's going to lock in that orientation there. The last thing is I'm just going to set a distance on this at 5 inches. That keeps 5/8 of an inch on the back so that we're not running into the back and not being able to successfully put it in our drawer. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and create our sheet metal flange. We're going to create that new component and leave it the same. We have our bottom flange here. The last thing that we're going to want to do is just create our vertical flanges that are going to make our drawer out. So we're going to do the two outside ones first. And we're going to go up about 1.75 on these. And then we're going to do our two front and backs. And we're going to do that at 1.75. Now we have our drawer in here. Everything looks great. The last thing we need to do is add in a little cutout for our finger to grab this drawer to bring it out. I'm just going to create a sketch on here. We're going to create a circle. and we're going to put that circle right on the center point. So we can either click on the center point here or draw and add that constraint. We'll open that up. We're going to do 1.5 as our diameter, and then cut this back through. And click OK. We'll add some radiuses to these corners, and then we are just about wrapped up. This kind of softens that area. It's ready to go. Now we can show all of our components by right-clicking up here, showing all components. And we can also show all bodies, make sure everything's good. All of this is completely done, looks really, really good. Now, the last thing I want to show is that you should be able to, when this is all said and done, go back to the very first step and change one thing, which is we could change that one plane at the very beginning to make this 6 inches instead of 2. We'll change that over here. And all of our components naturally just changed with it. Right? So we made one little change at the very, very first step, and everything worked with it. And that's a really good telltale of you understanding all of the basic understanding of what's going in the background of CAD. So we can see here, this is a 6-inch dimension now. It was 5 5/8. So we changed that out. Now, the last thing too is if we wanted to say powder coat these outside edges, we're going to want to take in that consideration on that slot that's on here. So if I was to add powder coating, which we have, we want Dom's desk to look as good as possible. We're going to come in here, select that. We're going to see that this is this sketch here. If we come in here and modify this to say 0.020, opens up that slot, we can click finish, and now we just have a larger slot for our tab to come through. If powder now builds up on the inside of this, we're still going to fit through and have a thorough design. So that is actually it. That's the Capstone all in all. Now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to jump back in here one last time, add that stuff to our SendCutSend cart and configure it with our hardware and finish out this project. So with that being said, we're going to jump into utilities. We're going to open up our SendCutSend plugin, and we can see all of our bodies coming through here. We're going to go through each one of these. I'm going to just show you guys one, and then we're going to jump all the way to the cart. On this one right here, each one of these is going to show you a body that is going to come through. If I select my body here versus here, I can select different components or different bodies as well. A great way to make this a little bit clearer is go ahead and name your bodies and your components, and those names will change on this side and make it a little bit easier to know which one's which. Once I have that body selected, I'm going to start the quoting process. That's going to take me to the next step, which is going to be material. Now, the material is going to be automatically selected for us based on the thickness that we're looking at in here. So we're going to see 0.63 automatically there. If I wanted to change it, which I wouldn't recommend because the bend radiuses are all set. Remember, we've got K factor and all that stretch is all put in here. You can click Show All. That shows all the materials and all of the options that are available, but Show Less brings us back to what we actually have it set for. 5052 063, we're going to click Quote. And what's really cool about this is that it automatically gives us the price for cutting and the 5 bends that is already set up right here. Now with that, this doesn't have our hardware put in it yet. We're going to add that on the cart side once we add it to our cart. We're going to click Add Cart, and from here, we're going to go ahead and view cart. Now I'm going to switch over to the SendCutSend side. I'm going to add all these over, and I'll see you back on that portion. Now that I've successfully added each one of our components to our cart, these have come through already bent, ready to go from our applications plugin. But what we have to do is add any secondary services like whole operations. On this one, we need to add our hardware into it, our nuts. So let's go ahead and click Add Service here in our cart. That's going to take us straight to the services portion. We can see that the bending's already put in play. We're going to go to Hardware. We're going to go to our catalog, selecting nuts, and we're going to select the 632. A lot of these are not able to come in through because of the geometry constraints. So we pre-designated these at 632 for a reason. We'll click apply. And right now, they're on the outside of our part. We need them to be on the inside so we don't have interference. So I'm going to flip that direction here. Seeing them pop on the inside, everything looks great. We're going to click done and click next. We're going to accept our warning. This is for just some deformation warnings with how close things are. We'll click save. And now we're back into our cart. We can see hardware got added successfully there. The other thing that we needed to do was add powder coating to one of our sidewalls. We also need to add hardware to this as well. So you can go ahead and practice that on your own. Adding powder coating to this, we're going to click add services. We're going to go ahead and skip past the first one, and we're going to go straight to add finishing. We're coming to powder coating, and we can select what other color we want. We're going to go with gloss red on this one, SendCutSend colors. Click done, save. And now we can also see in the cart process that we have red gloss powder on there, as well as the part is red. So now that we have all of these parts ready to go, we're ready to get this assembly made. Now, I hope you had a great first semester at SendCutSend education. I definitely did. With that, this wraps it up. Have a great summer, and we'll see you on semester 2.